Hold it. Thank you. I usually miss that. Call to order the Greenwood Advisory Planning Commission for Monday, February 28th. Before I get into the agenda, first of all, I want to thank Tim Schrader for his contributions to the Planning Commission. He was on the park board, or the park board appointee, and now we have Mike Probst.
It's me.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the Planning Commission,
Thank you very much.
and look forward to working with you for the next year.
Okay,
All right.
good to hear.
Thank you. First order of business, the approval of minutes from January 24th. We did
So
not-
moved.
Second. I did, Brian.
Motion by Monica, second by Mr. Walker. All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any special requests or continuances? Seeing none. Any old business? No. Old business from the floor? No. All right, new business. 249 and 516 Madison fee appeal. Timothy Crump appeals fees and order to vacate. And who starts?
Mr. Crump, you'd like to go to the podium there and explain what you're feeling and what you would like or believe.
I would ask that you state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Tim Crump, and I reside at 2928 Coventry Lane in Greenwood.
Mr. Crump, you will have to have the oath administered to you.
Sure.
Reading record.
Do you swear that the perjury, the testimony is true to the best of your knowledge?
Proceed.
Okay. Well, we'll go back to July 19th. I purchased the property at 516 North Madison Avenue. And it was a little bit prior to that, but July 19, I came up to the second floor and was telling them what I was doing with the garage. And they didn't seem to think I needed any permits. And, you know, I went through the whole thing. We weren't changing anything on the structure. All we did was we changed put some walls in, updated the electrical, that kind of good stuff. And then this year, well, it'll be July of 21, we found out that that we did have to have a permit. So at that point, I had a guy that works for me that is a property manager. He was taking care of it. I didn't realize what the you know, how quick the extent of this getting this done was. I had no idea. I never did. There was no certified letter or anything sent to me, which I have gotten those from stormwater and zoning. So I was unaware of really, you know, what exactly we needed to do. So I saw Ken one day putting a letter on my door. So I went out and saw him, and he explained everything to me, and we got to work, get it done. But so 516 was the first one. The second one was 249. And that was a garage, the exact same kind of thing as a garage. And then we updated the house as well. So, but in this process, you know, being right on Madison Avenue, no one ever stopped by. I never heard from anybody. And I mean, it was a beacon. I mean, there was no siding, no windows. It was down to studs. And, you know, no one from City of Greenwood or anybody could stop by just check and see, you know, so, you know, it's one of those things that I want to get fixed now and get taken care of.
Anything else?
I think that's fine. I mean, the only other thing is with these three projects, I've invested $450,000. City of Greenwood has done the grow program with me, giving me 150,000 of that 450. And I'm here to make the city a lot prettier, nicer, cleaner. I'm not here to hurt. You know, that was never an intention. So going forward, you know, I'm hoping I'll have a couple more projects. Going forward, I'll make sure everything's done correctly.
All right.
You swear or oath to perjury, the testimony is true to the best of your knowledge.
Good evening. I'm Shauna Coombs, the Greenwood City Attorney. My address is 300 South Madison Avenue, Greenwood, 46142, and I am here representing the Building Commissioner, Mr. Kenneth Steele, regarding the appeals, and there are actually 4 buildings involved. That would be 249 North Madison Avenue, the primary structure, 249 North Madison Avenue, a rear building conversion, 516 North Madison Avenue, Suite D, and 516 Madison Avenue, Suite E. The building commissioner has properly applied our building codes and the penalties and fees to these properties. He's performed the duties of his office diligently and in fact graciously, patiently, and has tried to almost hold the hand of the builder who built these and later Mr. Crump in trying to help them comply with the regulations. Yet despite his assistance and his efforts, Mr. Crump, the owner, did not comply with obtaining the proper permits for vacating the properties which were occupied after they were remodeled without certificates of occupancy and inspections. So I think the most efficient way is to give a review, a summary review of the facts surrounding the subject properties that support what our building commissioner has done, and ask you to affirm these orders. So we'll start with, it was June of 2021. Mr. Steele had recently returned from a military leave of absence. I believe he returned to the office May of 2021. And on June 25th, 2021, while inspecting another property on Madison Avenue with the Greenwood Fire Marshal, he discovered that a garage that had been located at the rear of 516 North Madison Avenue had been converted from a garage into a commercial structure. It appeared to have been divided into 2 suites, identified as Suite D and Suite E. Suite D was occupied by a beauty salon, and Suite E was occupied by Platinum Construction Group. No building permit or certificate of occupancy for the structure was on file with the city. And so at that time, Mr. Steele spoke with the tenant of the suite, a man named Rick Rupert, Suite E, who represented to Mr. Steele that he was the owner of the property, and that he in fact had performed the construction activities to do the remodeling and conversion. And Mr. Steele immediately advised him, Mr. Rupert, that he needed a permit to convert the garage to a commercial structure, that he needed to submit building plans and a certificate of design release from the Indiana Department of Homeland Security to the city to obtain the building permit, and that the structure must pass 3 inspections, footing, the rough end, and the final. If it passed the final, then it would receive a certificate of occupancy for the structure. I'm going to have Mr. Steele review what I have labeled as Exhibit 1 and ask him to confirm that there are true and accurate copies of documents from his file on 516 North Madison Avenue. Confirm are those true and accurate copies from your file records on 516 North Madison Avenue property. And if you leave a copy, please confirm. Sure. Want to distribute a copy of all of these too. planning commission members and their council.
Just let the record show that exhibit 1 has been distributed to the planning commission members.
Good look. Exhibit. The first page you'll see it's an aerial view off of what's called the Beacon. That's the public website that has aerial views of the property. And you'll see it is sort of outlined there in a blue rectangular shape. So page 1 shows the aerial view on March 27th of 2019. Page 2 shows an aerial view of the subject property December 15th, 2019. Page 3 shows an aerial view of the subject property 516 North Madison on April 3rd of 2020. Page 4 shows a view on December 11th of 2020. And as you go through and review those, you can see the rear building there was a garage. Not a commercial structure. Begin to see that there's construction activity taking place in December, beginning December of 2019. By April, you can see there are doors and windows. By December of 20, look at that overview, that property has been modified, converted. Mr. Steele has asked staff at CDS, he has not identified the person that Mr. Crump allegedly spoke to, and he says he went forward to and asked, and they said, hey, you don't need to do anything to convert this garage. So take that as it may. I'm not saying that isn't true, but we certainly couldn't identify anyone on staff who had met with him and told him that he did not have to have any kind of a permit to convert the structure.
No, you cannot. You'll have a chance at the end after she talked to her about.
So that shows the photographs, and you can see the work that took place for which there was no permit, and there was indeed a conversion. And so Mr. Rupert verbally agreed on the 25th of June that he would move forward with getting the proper permits and submitting the plans. Shortly thereafter, sometime after, was brought to Mr. Steele's attention by one of Mr. Rupert's employees that he was also constructing a similar conversion, a commercial building down the street at 249 North Madison Avenue. So Mr. Steele and the fire marshal then proceeded to go to 249 Madison and discovered that the primary structure that was there, the front of the property had been remodeled, and there was no building permit in the city records for it. The garage, again, located at the rear of the property, was being converted to a detached commercial structure, again, with no record of a building permit or record of state certificate of design release, and 2 detached accessory buildings that had formerly been on the property had been demolished without permit. So now we have Mr. Steele identified documents and certified they are true and accurate copies from his record on 249 North Madison Avenue. These are true and accurate copies. They are. distribute to you what Mr. Seal has confirmed are 2 nectar copies out of his file for 249 North Madison Avenue. Primary structure.
Let the record show that exhibit 2 has been distributed to the plan commission.
Walk through the pictures of that exhibit as well. See that property, primary structure. On page 1 is the aerial view, again, from the Seagan public site that shows, you're going to get 2 views. You're going to see it from Madison Avenue backwards. Going, I think, probably considered east to west, and we're also going to see a view of the property from the south that shows the primary structure near Madison Avenue and the building in the rear. And we have dates on those again, December of 19. You'll see that of the primary structure, the nearest Madison Avenue looks like. And then you'll see it again in a different view. And then in April of 20, another view. By December of 20, you can see that there's construction activity on that primary structure near Madison Avenue. You can see a construction dumpster, some activity happening there. There's additional pages of photographs on page 5. It shows the finished conversion of this and the modeling. So when he discovered that, he telephoned Mr. Rupert about the violations. On July 12th, he met Mr. Rupert again, that he asserted that he was the owner in possession of the property, and he met Mr. Seal. Mr. Rupert met Mr. Seal, the fire marshal, on site at 249 North Madison. At the initial meeting in June, he did not mention to them when he spoke to them at 516 North Madison that he was also doing construction work down the street at 249 North Madison. And again, Mr. Seal had to discuss the city's regulations and requirements, the permitting, the inspection, the certificate occupancy requirements, and Mr. Rupert worked with the city to bring the property into compliance. 2 weeks have passed since that initial June meeting, which is now July 12th. And Mr. Rupert had taken no action to begin making the corrections at 516 North Madison. Mr. Steele had been willing to work with him. He told him what he needed, and he was being patient. But he had given him a couple of weeks, and now it's July, and he finds there's additional violations at 249 North Madison. So he determined that official action was necessary. So on July the 12th, Mr. Seal served a notice of violation for both Suite D and E at 516 North Madison by hand delivering those notices to Mr. Rupert at the 516 North Madison address. Seal of the property. The notices cited failure to obtain a permit prior to starting work, violation of Greenwood Municipal Code Section 711, and occupying the suites without certificates of occupancy in violation of Greenwood Municipal Code 715. And Mr. Rupert to obtain a building remodel permit for each site, each suite, or be in the process thereof within 30 days of receiving the notice, to submit to the city a state design release or a change of use of occupancy of the structure, and once permitted, file documentation with the city from a state licensed design professional, that would be a state licensed architect and engineer, for areas of the structure that had been covered that the city was now not able to see and inspect. Notice warrant, Mr. Rupert had failure to comply with the notice may result in additional fines and fees. A copy of that July 12th notice is on page 5 of Exhibit 1. That day, Mr. Seal also served a notice of violation for a primary structural remodel at 249 North Madison Avenue by hand delivery and posting the notice on the property that day. 12/21. The notice cited failure to obtain a permit prior to performing work, in violation of Greenwood Municipal Code Section 711. And Mr. Ruber was ordered to obtain a building remodel permit for the primary structure or be in the process there, or within 30 days of receipt, and that escape design release may also be required for the structure. And there was warned Mr. Ruber that failure to comply with the notice may result in additional fines and fees. A copy of that July 12th notice is on page 6 of Exhibit 2. Following the issuance of the notice of the violation, Mr. Steele met with Mr. Rupert again at 249 North Madison on July 29th. Or a few weeks later, he's meeting with him again on site at 249 North Madison. And he met with him for approximately 1 to 1.5 hours. He Mr. Steele reviewed a rough drawing that Rupert presented. He explained clearly what has to be included in the plans, including mechanicals, and he met with him several times after that at each property to discuss the progress and review the rough drafts of plans. August. Into September, October, November, weeks passed. Minimal progress. There's still no permits, no certificates of design release on file for the properties. So on November 24th, 2021, Mr. Steele noticed a release sign posted on 249 North Madison for the rear building located there, which had been remodeled or altered without a permit. So that day, having been frustrated by the inactivity, despite his efforts to answer his questions and provide guidance on what to do, and patiently waiting and working with him, he concluded that the imposition of fines was necessary. To light a fire, we need Mr. Rupert to try to encourage him to comply. So Mr. Steele sent an email that day to Mr. Rupert, setting forth the action necessary to bring the properties into compliance with the city's building code and placing him on notice that at the 6-month mark from the initial June 2021 date, Mr. Steele would begin assessing fines on both properties if they were not brought into compliance. Now I'm going to have Mr. Steele identify what I labeled as Exhibit 3 to make sure that it is a true and accurate copy of the email that he sent that day. Is you accurate? So have a copy for each member.
The record show that Exhibit 3 has been distributed to the Planning Commission.
We will see that in that email, he clearly sets forth what needs to be done. It is approaching, I quote, the 6-month mark of violation. Work has progressed, but no permits have been issued, no CDR on file, and it appears 249 North Madison is ready to be leased without a certificate of occupancy. The time for assistance has now come and gone. Please be advised of the following. First, a certificate of design release shall be obtained for the change of use and construction remodel for both properties, 516 North Madison and 249 North Madison. Second, both properties will be permitted locally by the city of Greenwood. Third, a letter from a registered design professional shall be submitted for all concealed work in lieu of inspection or any material concealing inspectable areas shall be removed. Lastly, leniency was provided for your business and the hair salon located at 516 North Madison because the businesses were already operational. No such leniency will be provided for 249 North Madison if that property is found to be occupied without a certificate of occupancy. An initial fee of $1,000 will be issued plus $100 per day the property remains in violation, provided the supporting Greenwood municipal codes. And warned him, furthermore, at the 6-month mark, applicable fines will then be levied at both properties. As he discussed previously with him, and steps will be taken to initiate a planning review board referral. He tried and tried to work with the builder. He represented it. He was in possession of the property and owned it, and yet we had to give him this email because still things were not progressing. That was November 24th. Weeks passed. It's now December 14th, 2021. And Mr. Rupert had not replied. So, having done a little further research, Mr. Steele confirmed that the registered owner of the property was Mr. Timothy Crum. Under Indiana law, ignorance of the law is no excuse, and as a property owner, our codes hold the owner accountable for the activity that is happening on their property. And Mr. Rupert was a business partner of Mr. and he was his agent. So notice on him is notice on Mr. Crum. Still, on December 14th, issued to Mr. Crump and Mr. Rupert a notice of non-compliance in order to vacate the premises for failing to correct the outstanding violations of site 516 North Madison Avenue, Suites D and E. The notice and order set forth violations of Greenwood Municipal Code 711 for failure to obtain a permit before beginning construction, and Greenwood Municipal Code Section 715 for failing to obtain inspection of the properties and allowing their occupation without a certificate of occupancy. The notice and order cited Greenwood Municipal Code Sections 466 subsection 28 of the official fee schedule as the authority, and at that time, and only at that time in December, even though these had been going on since June, assessed a fee of double the permit cost in addition to the permit cost for violating Greenwood Municipal Code 711, and also assessed a $1,000 fee pursuant to the Greenwood Municipal Code Section 466 subsection 20F for the occupation without the C of O. The notice and order also notified that pursuant to Greenwood Municipal Code Section 6285, a fee of $50 will be assessed on the case for each day the property remains in violation up to the small claims jurisdictional limit of the Johnson Circuit and Superior Court's Magistrate Division. Mr. Steele ordered the defendants to vacate the property within 10 days of receipt of the notice, as it was currently illegally occupied. Tenants were in there without any certificate of occupancy. Mr. Steele personally served the notices for Suites D and E to Mr. Crump. Copies of that December 14th, 2021 notice of non-compliance in order to vacate the premises for 516 North Madison Suite D and Suite D are found, I believe, in pages 6 through 9 of Exhibit 1. On December 14th, Mr. Steele also issued a notice of non-compliance for failure to obtain a permit prior to starting work on the primary structure at 249 North Madison Avenue. Then cited Greenwood Municipal Code 466 subsection 28 official fee schedule as the authority, and assessed a fee of double the permit cost in addition to the permit cost for violating Greenwood Municipal Code Section 711, and also notified them that pursuant to Municipal Code Section 6285 a fee of $50 will be assessed on the case for each day the property remains in violation up to that small claims jurisdiction limit of the Johnson Circuit Superior Magistrate Court. So through that notice by posting it on the property at 249 Copy of that December 14, 21 notice of non-compliance is found on page 7 of Exhibit 2. Thirdly, notice of violation in order to vacate premises for 249 North Madison Avenue, what was being called Suite C, which Mr. Crump just assigned an address to, having constructed it, which is the rear building on that lot, set forth violations of, again, Greenwood Municipal Code, Section 711, failure to get a permit before beginning construction, and Greenwood Municipal Code, Section 715, for failing to obtain inspection of the properties and allowing their use and occupation without the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. The notice and order cited, Greenwood Municipal Code, Section 466, subsection 28, of the official fee schedule, has authority and assessed a fee of double the permit cost, in addition to the permit cost for violating 711 and not having the permit, and also assessed a $1,000 fee pursuant to Greenwood Municipal Code, Section 466, subsection 20F, for occupying the structure without a certificate of occupancy. Rupert and Mr. Crump were told that the permit will not be issued until the violations and fees are satisfied. Mr. Seal ordered the defendants to vacate that property within 10 days of receipt of the notice, as again is currently legally occupied. Mr. Seal served this notice in order by posting it upon the property. Now I'm going to show you what I've labeled as Exhibit 4. Mr. Seal confirmed that's true and accurate copy of the documents on his records. True and accurate. Thank you. Distribute with label S. County Commissioners Exhibit 4.
Oh, thank you. Does the record show that Exhibit 4 has been distributed to the Plan Commission?
So on that day, we have pictures. Yeah, the 4.5. On that exhibit, that you can see that the building and the rear of the property on 249 over a period of time shows that construction activity to convert it, remodel it, had taken place. No permits on file for remodeling activity. So, the similar to obtain, seal, issue a notice of violation. That property. Ones that I previously stated. Then we have a matter of two accessory structures that were previously on the property had been demolished without getting a permit. They have been removed. So also, December 14th, Seal issued a notice of violation for 249 Madison Avenue, Indiana, setting forth violation of Greenwood Municipal Code 711, where you obtain permit for demolition of the two detached accessory structures that were located behind the primary structure in accordance with Greenwood Municipal Code 466, subsection 28. Official fee schedule assessed a fee of double the permit cost in addition to the permit cost for the violation. They were notified, Mr. Crump and Mr. Rupert, that failure to comply would result in additional fees. Mr. Seals served this notice by posting it on his property, having them identified, with case of 55, there's a true and accurate copy of the notice that was sent regarding the demolition permits.
Let the record show that exhibit 5 has been distributed to the planning commission.
Aerial photographs of part of these public records that show the little building there. You can see 2 detached buildings really on page 1. And on page 2, you see that the buildings there. And then you see photographs showing that the buildings ultimately are gone. There. So on page 5 of that exhibit is a copy of that December 14th, 2021 notice of violation. Forward copy of the December 14th, 2020 violation is on page 5. Okay. On December 16th, 2 days later, the owner of the property, Timothy Crump, filed his formal appeals of the December 14th, 2021 notices to vacate that were issued for 249 North Madison. And you see that rear building, 249 North Madison Avenue primary structure, and 516 North Madison Avenue Suite D and Suite E. Now, it wasn't clear, but I interpreted that to mean he also was appealing the notices for not having the demolition permits, and that's why I've included it in the record today. So those are the facts that bring us to you and before you this evening. 516 North Madison Suite D and E remain occupied. They have been continually occupied since June of 2021, despite the July 12th notice, the violation for occupying it without the C of O, without the inspections. The orders to vacate that were issued December 14th were stayed upon the filing of the appeal. But it's to be noted that he knew since summer and did not get the permits, didn't get the plans, didn't get the registered design professionals letters, and the people remained occupying the buildings that hadn't been inspected. It's likely that he continued to collect rent. I don't know that. Something you might want to ask him. He has been active since December of 2021. He engaged the services of an architect to assist him with the required building plans and obtained the state certificates of design release. And he's working on the letter from the registered design professional regarding the status of the concealed areas, that they are in fact safe and structurally sound and comply with code. On January 28th, 2022, that is 7 months after the initial conversation regarding the violations, Mr. Crump submitted the applications for the permits to the city with those state design releases. But the city will not issue the requisite permits until the required permit fees and fines are paid. And Mr. Crump hasn't paid them. He apparently is of the opinion that they are unreasonably high, or he doesn't want to pay them, which is why he filed this appeal. I think that an actual summary of exhibits which show that Mr. Rupert and Mr. Crump were made aware of the violations, that they were told the actions they needed to take, and the items they needed to submit to obtain those permits and receive those, and they were given more than ample time. Mr. Seal was very patient and lenient with them. He could have begun finding them in July, and he did not. He really bent over backwards to try and accommodate them and help them through this process. He was more than patient. His actions and the fees and penalties that he assessed for the multiple violations, I think, are not unreasonable. He doesn't have discretion about what those are. The council sets those. He can't decide to do something lesser. If he determines there's a violation, there's a set fine or a penalty or a fee to be paid. Those are set. Building regulations are safety regulations. They're there for a reason. They protect the public safety and welfare of anyone that might be going into those commercial structures or any property owners that are adjacent or joining them to make sure that their structures are safe and sound. It's not potential fire, for instance, of electrical, right? And that could spread. We want to deter people from not complying. We also need to recoup some of those costs when staff has to babysit or hold people's hands through these processes to get them to do what they're supposed to do. And so that's why they're set at the amounts they are. And Mr. Seal can't change those. Finds a violation, that's what he has to assess. And so on the last pages of each of those exhibits, you will find there's a summary with a timeline of some of the key dates that I sort of summarized over, and the calculation showing how the building commissioner determined what those fees or what those penalties should be. And so I ask you to affirm the notice of non-compliance in order to vacate for 516 North Madison Avenue, Suite D. The assessment of a fine of $2,200, a double permit fee of $776, and occupying a structure without a certificate of occupancy fee of $1,000 for 516 North Madison Suite D, for total fines and fees of $3,976. That you affirm the notice of non-compliance in order to vacate for 516 North Madison Avenue Suite E, and the assessment of a fine of $2,200, a double permit fee of $776, and an occupying a structure without a certificate occupancy fee of $1,000, for total fines and fees of $3,976. Affirm the December 14, 2021 notice of non-compliance for the primary structure at 249 North Madison Avenue, and the assessment of a fine of $2,200 and a double permit fee of $861.45, for total fines and fees of $3,061.45. Affirm the December 14, 2021 notice of violation in order to vacate the rear building structure at 249 North Madison Avenue, and the assessment of a double permit fee of $795.10, and an occupying a structure without a certificate occupancy fee of $1,000, for total fines and fees of $1,795.10. Affirm the December 14, 2021 notice of violation for the demolition of 2 detached accessory structures located at 249 North Madison Avenue behind the primary structure, and the assessment of a double face permit fee of $50. And now enter into the record what we have labeled as the exhibits 1 through 5 into the record. Further exhibits 6, 7, and 8 that are going to distribute, and those are actually certified copies, clerks, certified copies of the relevant ordinances that are the subject of these violations and the assessments of the penalties and fines. Now submit those into the record. I will also distribute a copy of them. Plan commission members from the originals in the file. Exhibit 6 is a certified copy of the municipal code, chapter 7, article 1, the building code.
The records show that Exhibit 6 has been distributed to the Plan Commission.
I also now submitting to the record Exhibit 7, which is a certified copy of the River Municipal Code, Chapter 4, Article 2, Division 6, which is Section 6466, the official fee schedule. Record.
The records show that Exhibit 7 has been distributed to the Plan Commission.
I promise you, this is the last one. Now placing the record requires label after building commissioners exhibit E. It is a certified copy of Greenwood Municipal Code, Chapter 6, Article 7, the Property Maintenance Code, Section 6-5 Administration, which is also cited.
The records show that Exhibit 8 has been distributed to the Plan Commission.
Seal is also available if you have any specific questions for him, but I guess to sum up and finally close my initial presentation. Mr. Crump said, I didn't know. You know, I had a property manager that was there and I didn't know. Well, the law says if you're the owner and he knew construction activity was happening, it's incumbent for him to know what's going on in his property to make sure that permits and regulations are followed. Not an excuse. And he has known. And he should be held accountable. Again, we have regulations for a reason, and that's to protect the public health and safety. So I really do, again, ask that you affirm all of these notices and orders to vacate.
Mr. Seal, do you have anything to add?
I have one small factual correction to make, if possible.
Okay.
Should I take over there?
Yes, please. And then state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Kenneth Seal, building commissioner for the city of Greenwood. Residence is 8205 Crosser Drive, Indianapolis. Small correction in the statement that was made previously that the state design release have been granted from the state of Indiana. They have not, and the permits are not currently ready to be issued. However, all of the appropriate applications and information has been submitted to the state. It can't be a lengthy process, and we're not currently penalizing him because of the state's process.
He was.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's it. Mr. Crum?
December 14th, when Kenneth stopped by and put those notes on the door, that was the first time that I actually knew what the extent of the problem was. I had a gentleman that was doing this and wasn't telling me what should have been told. So as soon as Kenneth did tell me, we sat down, I went over and I went and got Mauer surveying. I had to get a site plan. And it took 3 weeks to get the site plan. As soon as I got that, then we got the rest of it done and it was submitted. But my intent, I would fix it to begin with, if I would know. So my intent was not to put this off, because it's gonna have to be done anyway. That's, I've lived in this city for 30 years. I've had an insurance agency here for 28 years. And I'm not here to, not do with the statutes or anything, what they're supposed to do. Yeah, there's a little bit of ignorance, probably on my part, but I went up to the second floor and I was told I didn't have to have a permit. I just proceeded. I had no idea. So.
Anything else?
In closing, I think I said it earlier. So Rupert was his agent. He was in possession of his property. He was acting on his behalf. He's accountable for what Mr. Cooper did as the owner of the property. And again, ignorance of the law is no excuse. For the owner, you're supposed to know what you're supposed to do and you're supposed to do it. And again, we can't find anyone in the CDS Department of 42 that recalls ever speaking with Mr. Crump about his plans for the conversion of the garage at 516 North Madison, who said, oh, you don't have to get any kind of permits. Just haven't been able to identify who that person was. So I think I pretty much said all I have to say. So thank you for your time and attention. I know it was a long factual summary, but we had 2 properties and 4 separate violations. So thank you for your attention.
Yeah, the board can open it up for discussion, comments, and questions.
Okay. It's open for any questions or comments to Mr. Rupert or the city staff. So anybody with questions?
Guess I could ask a few. So Mr. Rupert was the contractor you hired? Aren't they supposed to, he's done work before in the past, probably, is that correct?
Never done a commercial, it's been a special.
But he does something, he should hardly build a dog fence without a permit. So he should have known that, right?
Well, he went with me when I went up to the second floor. And that was something else that was not brought up. Lori Tobin worked on the second floor at that time. And she had told me that there was a lot of turmoil and disarray at that time, and definitely could have been, someone could have made a mistake. So.
And so if is the building safe now? Let's say all the permitting and applications were filled out as they should have been. Do you issue the permits for occupancy, and you've been over probably inspected it, even though you guys filled out the paperwork, or have you not done that yet?
Right, so as I've spoken with Mr. Rupert and Mr. Crump, at least on the surface, the work appears to be quality. We drive by these properties each day.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do as well. They look nice. They're a great treat for downtown. And the last thing I want to do is negatively affect the small town business owner that's in it. In saying that, we do have to make sure they're safe. Since December, once Mr. Crump got involved, he has been very active with my office. He did hire an architect to create his drawings, do all the submittal into the state. And he did perform an independent inspection on the properties. He did find some violations, though minor in nature. And so while the buildings have not been certified officially safe, there does not, again, on the surface, appear to be cause for personal life safety at this time. If it were anything more urgent or something that myself or my office felt to be an emergency, we would have stopped the occupancy.
Another question, if that's okay. So you said it was about 400 grand spent so far. You mentioned you got funds from the city of Greenwood.
I did the GROW program.
What's that?
The GROW program, they'll match funds up to $1,000 per property to update your properties with new windows, siding, landscaping.
So did you get a packet of information that explains that? What on the
GROW?
for the growth?
Yeah,
Because I was thinking in that, if they're gonna provide that opportunity, they would probably specify. Permits.
no,
If I may, he had to sign a GROW agreement to get the money, and part of the terms in there say you will comply with all applicable city rules, regulations, and ordinances. You were contractually bound to get those permits, and you did not. So I'm just putting you on notice, sir. That might be grounds that you might have to be requested to repay that money back to the city for that grant if you breached your GROW agreement.
With the city one, I mean, if there's been improvements made, if he's already made the motion to do what's right, but I don't know why the city. That's not my call.
I have a quick question, Mr. Crump. Is this the first time you've ever done any kind of rehabbing,
yes.
flipping?
Mr. Crump, who is Lori Tobin?
Sorry, who asked that?
I'm sorry, I did.
Lori Tobin she worked up in the building commission department. And what's that? Word there? Is it Barrett?
What was it?
That's probably her main thing. In fact, she hired Ken Siegel to take over the job, I believe.
No, the mayor hired
What was the-
Well, then maybe she hired you.
Well,
Yeah, or-
that's hearsay because we don't have Ms. Barrett here that we can ask her what her testimony is, so.
When did you meet with Ms. Barrett?
We just talked on the phone this week.
No, I mean, initially. When you came in to meet on the second floor, was she involved at that point?
No, she was not. No, there was a gentleman that talked to us and, I didn't grab a name or anything. I didn't think I was gonna, now on, it's something you gotta do, you need to do. I wish I had a name. But I didn't go to the second floor. I did ask the questions.
So after, and you said Mr. Rupert went with you,
Yes, he did.
and do you have an approximate time frame when that was?
Yeah, that was July of 2019.
When did you start work on the property?
March 27th is what this exhibit 1 shows.
Of 20,
19. Is that right?
That's what's
Yeah.
mentioned.
March 27th, 2019.
2019.
wait a minute, if you're,
And it could have been there.
Oh, wait a minute, that's a picture. That doesn't mean that's the start.
Last page, timeline.
Well, that just, at that point, after that meeting, had you turned everything over to Mr. Rupert at that point?
Yes.
They're all work. When was the, you had, obviously, by the exhibits, you had communication with Mr. Rupert. Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And when was your first contact with Mr. Crump?
On December
This past December?
14th, yep. So on that day, I'd known that Mr. Crump was listed as the property owner officially. Mr. Rupert, up until then, had still maintained that he was somehow involved or owned the properties. However, when I was delivering the notices and posting them, it's when an employee of Mr. Crump's noticed that, and then he notified Mr. Crump, and then Mr. Crump and I met outside and had a conversation where I handed him the remainder of the notices.
And he's been acting in good faith since then?
Yes, sir.
What's the total fee for the day? As you were reading a month, it came up with about
Yeah.
nearly 13,000.
Yeah.
16,834, 55 cents. I get that from the 516 North Madison Avenue, Suite D at 7952. The 516 North Madison Avenue, Suite E at 3976. The 249 North Madison Avenue primary structure at $3,061.45. And the 249 North Madison Avenue Beauty Salon Unit C at $17.95.10. The 249 North Madison Avenue Shed Demo at $50. Totaling those, I got $16,834.
I actually said for Suite D, total 3,976.
Yes,
Suite E, 3,976. 249 primary structure, $3,061.45. 249 North Madison rear building, total $1,795.10. And the demo violations for 249, $50.
so I may have an additional $39.76 in there, which would bring it to $12,858.55.
Okay. Of that 12,000 plus, how much of those are penalties? Do we know that?
We summarize those. Did you want to explain this, they're summarized here?
Yeah, sure. I also have put them on the back.
Right, and
Right.
so here's the back page of each of the exhibits that shows your calculation, which should summarize for you
Right.
what is a fee, what is a.
I just thought you might have a total in that.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's technically all penalty, right? I mean, the double permit, the 1,000 for those properties that are currently occupied, $50 per day under administration. For the days from issuance up until the day prior to him applying. None of those calculations have any of the permit fees that he would otherwise have to pay regardless. For example, if a permit costs $500, you have to pay the $500, that's the permit cost. The fee then doubles it. So that has all been subtracted from those calculations. So what you have before you is all, for all intents and purposes, fines.
And in addition to this number, when the application for permits are submitted, that's a different total.
Yes, sir, because, and again, on the back of each of the exhibits, where I've stated double permit fee out of 4-6620, I think, A, or F, I list the permit fee. We went ahead and calculated the permit fee. And then, of course, we multiply that by 2. So the actual permit fee is stated, however, that fee is not in the total of the fine.
And those fines began when? Back in July,
December.
No, sir, on December.
just in December.
Yes, sir.
So the fines have only been since December.
Yes, sir.
To the date that the application was filed. He suspended them and didn't assess anymore after he filed the applications.
That's
Understand.
correct. Because as we work through our process and as the state works through theirs, the gentleman shouldn't be penalized
I agree.
if we didn't get to something quick enough, so.
Yes.
A question's come up, is exhibit 5, the shed demolition in this appeal?
Yes, that's the $50.
That's directed at Mr. Crump.
I didn't appeal that, so, I mean, I didn't know I had that one, but, you know, just like this.
So is this project rectifiable or is it a loss? I mean, you pay the fees and get things worked out with architects, you submit drawings and take care of business like you're supposed to, and this project will go forward.
Basically, yes, sir. There is still a little bit of an administrative process that he has to follow through on, which is currently in the works, as I stated. There are a few issues that may still require to be mitigated. And these are issues not related to building safety, but more so accessibility, right? The size of the bathroom, the location of the toilet, something like that. These are things that he could request an administrative variance for through Department of Homeland Security, or once the permit issues, then you can correct it.
And then I have another question, probably directed towards the planning director. These are site plans submitted for these projects?
You just hit on what I was going to bring up, because that was going to go in tandem with my comments to build on what Mr. Seal had said. So these permits that are in for review now, planning does check off on all of them. And both properties will need a site plan review. The 249 property did not have a parking lot to begin with. The exhibits we've seen today have shown that, so that will need a site plan review. The other property at 516 was previously gravel. I'll have to review with our stormwater and engineering departments to determine what we will do in terms of water quality with that, and that will determine if that one needs a site plan review as well. So I'll have to review that one after this meeting to see if a site plan is needed on that as well. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Another question. Mr. Seal, how will you handle the issue of what's behind drywall? And was it you not having the opportunity to view it prior to that stage of construction?
Right, yes, sir. So there's a couple of things that is recommended and is an adopted practice by the state of Indiana that provides this guideline with that. Okay, so number one, we certainly can have the gentleman or the building owner remove whatever material, be it drywall, wood, or whatever, is concealing the MEP, mechanical, electrical, or plumbing elements behind that wall, okay, to expose them for inspection and to ensure compliance. Typically, these are destructive tests, and when we believe there to be an issue, especially if it's a safety type issue behind that concealment, then we will order that to be done, right? In other cases, for example, when we can get up into an attic, when we can go into a basement, we could otherwise inspect other elements, then we can trust that, let's say the wire traveling down the wall probably terminates within that outlet, and we can just take the outlet off and check the wires to make sure the terminations were correct. We also, in those instances, we will conduct as much of an inspection as we can to ensure compliance. We will also mandate that a third-party registered design professional, so that's going to be either an architect or an engineer, stamped with the state of Indiana, will perform their own independent inspections. So they have the ability to do things like pressure tests on plumbing to ensure there's no leaks on your plumbing and drainage systems, whereas we don't have those tools. They can run continuity tests throughout the entire electrical system to ensure there's no breaks or no other issues, and that wires go where they in fact are intended to go. Continuity being energize it on one end, check it on another. Mechanical blower door CFM test, air change test, things like this. They'll perform these tests, and if the structure as a whole, including its mechanicals, MEPs, are satisfactory, then they'll create a document, they'll sign it, stamp it, seal it, and then they'll file it with us. We'll also file it with the state of Indiana. We'll typically accept that in lieu of inspection to those concealed areas. That typically satisfies the state and local jurisdictions. If there are any recommendations throughout that report, then we would of course follow up to make sure that those items have been.
And that alternate procedure is something that is occasionally performed by not inspecting prior to closing up.
Occasionally, again, if we have cause of reason to believe that, you know, if we're finding maybe in other areas multiple violations and things like this, we may require the removal of some items. However, again, if on the surface the outlets work, they test out properly, the GFCI is tripped, the water runs, there doesn't appear to be a leak, there aren't any red flags, and let's say your typical home or building inspection before you purchase one, then we'll typically allow the owner, the builder, to provide us with that registered design professional documentation. In most cases, when we don't feel that there's a major issue, it's a lot less intrusive and typically works out better for everyone.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Probst, to follow up to your comment earlier, I looked at it while we were sitting here, the 516 project would need a site plan as well.
Very good.
And should these two businesses Mr. Steele was talking about needing to vacate, should they not vacate, we do need to pursue use variances on 2 of them because salons are not permitted in the Old Town District.
Hey, can I add something to that? The salon was there way before the variance. So they have their excise and all that back in March of 20. And that can be verified.
You've engaged with an architect,
Yes, I have.
and when did you do that?
As soon as I knew we had issues,
December? I mean.
Yep.
And he's gonna create the site plan and,
he's got pretty much all that.
okay, all right.
For the record,
And there's cost that goes with that.
an architect can do a site plan. So I hope-
Well, I'll have to get
No,
into
now
it
we're
too. Yes.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make sure, because there's detention concerns. There's hard surface, but there was not hard surface.
Stormwater quality.
Yeah, water quality and detention, and I don't think staff's gonna look for any waivers, to grant for any of that. This should have went through the proper procedures.
So when he submits those, there's fees for review and.
Yeah, we'll go outside review for the drainage
Right.
detention, water quality, other items.
So he's got upcoming costs on what the architect presents.
Right, but again, asking for a waiver because it's already there and they can't provide something that's not an excuse for not doing it.
So total fines right now, round numbers, $12,500, something like that, right?
It's closer to 16.
No, I think we had double up on one. I think
Yeah, I had double up
we
on one.
clarified that it was
My bad.
about 12,500.
$12,808.55 because he was not appealing the $50
Right.
demo already.
Uh,
So, Ms. Coons is $12,808.55. What you show?
I actually didn't add it all up.
Oh, never mind.
From what you read, I just read out the total for each one of them. I did not add.
The $50 is still a fine, correct?
Yes, but that's.
But he's
part
not
of the
appealing
appeal
That's
process.
not, you know,
He's not appealing that.
and if I could, just to save some time here, depending on whatever way this goes, there are three, he has three petitions to appeal, so we would have to do three separate motions, however we do it. I would recommend you split up those fines and attach it to each separate petition.
Or D&E attached.
D and E are together, 249,
Right.
North Madison is by itself, and then 249 back building. Those are the three separate petitions that you're hearing right now.
Thank you.
It's unfortunate that Mr. Rupert led you down the primrose path, so to speak. I think, and I'm gonna pose this to the staff, we try and do something to help with the fees. He's got a lot of fees, he's gonna have a lot of, fees with the architect and then submitting them and review. And so he's got a lot of costs coming up. And then whatever those findings are, changing things, possible, going in to see stuff that's hidden, what happens with parking lots, all that kind of stuff. I would ask the staff if, and obviously we have to break these down, we're gonna have to do that before we can take an action on it. But that we try to at least keep his fines to maybe about $7,500 total. I'm asking that question. So open up that for any questions amongst the commission.
Mr. President,
Yes,
I have been a client and friend from Mr. Crump for over 20 years, so I'm in a conflict, so I will not be voting this evening.
okay. Probably should accuse that before the hearing.
Probably should have sat through, and you probably should just leave the room, so your presence might not be influential on your fellow members if you're going to not participate.
That's, yeah. Hearing's over at this point.
Yeah, you gotta go home early.
Does anyone else, and yes, before we go on,
Well, there's
does anyone else
nothing
know
but
Mr. Crump
experience.
personally?
I do.
How well do you know him?
I went to high school with him and played football with him.
Do you have any?
I grew up in Greenwood too. So, I mean, I know a lot of these people that come through here, but yeah, I know.
No, it's not a conflict to just know somebody, but the idea, if you consider him such a good friend, that your ability to remove yourself and be unbiased and impartial is affecting your service on this committee, then you would need to recuse yourself. Or if you have any financial or pecuniary, I guess, business ventures or interests of that sort. That's the type of stuff you recuse yourself for, not just because you know him and you went to high school with him.
Well, I get my insurance from him.
Do you feel do you feel that affects your ability to be impartial on this panel?
No.
I would just say, and I like that idea, try to
And if, you know, open that for discussion. If you think it's more or less, we can certainly do that. In the meantime, will somebody break this up between the three?
Let me give my 2 cents real quick too, if I could, from a legal perspective, because this is kind of you're in an odd situation here as an HEC reviewing building code violations. He doesn't have any recourse in terms of taking this in front of the court and saying this is unfair, this is unreasonable. His appeal from here is up to some fire safety board in Indianapolis. Because it was made more of reviewing decisions as to whether or not whatever he did was in compliance, not, hey, you refuse to get a permit. I think as a practical matter, splitting something up is very difficult to do, and it's very hard to do from, we're serving in a judicial function right now. If that's something you want to do, the more practical approach would be, if you find that this is the type of fine or fee that needs to be affirmed, you did do something wrong. The city has the discretion as to how they collect on those fines and fees, as to how they levy them, as to how they assess them. That's something, seems like he extended that for a while now, but he has, your building commissioner has the discretion as to when he's going to say, all right, enough's enough, I'm gonna start doing this. And what you're reviewing is his discretion, whether or not it was appropriate for him to do that. They could decide, the city could decide, you know what, after that hearing, you got everything in order. It's 2 months later and everything's good to go. We can go light on the fines and fees. That's much more of a workable approach than for us to try to pencil in how we're gonna. Because we have to go all the way back to square one and say, well, this is how we're gonna do this fine.
When are the fees due?
Sir, they're due at the time of permit issuance.
Of the penalties as well? Or I guess I'm asking, when are the penalties due?
Yes, same time. So once he's satisfied the state of Indiana DHS, and we've completed our reviews and the permit is ready to be issued, he'll be notified, and he'll be notified of the total permit fee, including any fines
Any back fines?
or anything else like that. That would first have to be paid prior to issuing the permit.
How many permits does he have to get?
So he'll get a total of 5 permits. Each space within 516, which is D and E, those are individual tenant finishes.
Okay.
Almost like a strip mall, so
Gotcha. Yep.
it's not guaranteed that they'll always be there. And then for 249, the primary structure, and 249 was what he's identified as C, the accessory structure to the rear. And then, of course, the demolition permit, just for the record, to show that the properties were removed. We can remove those properties in GIS and then start moving towards what get rid of the parking lot.
So is that a total of 21 permits? 5, 5, 5, and 5, and then 1 for demolition?
No, 5 total.
No, sir, it's 5 total.
Okay.
If you're thinking individual trades and stuff, that's all.
No, I'm thinking of individual properties.
It's 2.
There's 516 Suite D, 516 Suite E, 249 primary, 249 C, the rear, and then the demo permits.
Those are the 5 permits?
Those
Yes,
are
sir.
5.
Okay.
The demo's not being appealed.
So the demo's done. Yeah, the demo's, yeah,
Right, I believe the gentleman asked how many permits total, so I.
Sorry.
right, no, yeah. And he, and Mr. Crump said he was not appealing the demo.
So just a single permit covers one of those, like
As far as the demolition. permit?
516D, no, 516D. It's only one permit required for that property.
For that,
For that suite.
Yes,
For that
because
suite.
D is a suite, a single tenant suite within a larger building. So each
I'm gonna read
suite,
this.
D and E, will have their own separate permit because,
Each one will have a single permit.
yes,
That'll cover all the construction.
within that suite, yes.
I didn't know if there'd be an electrical permit, a building permit.
No, sir, they're all included into the one. A lot of people refer to it as a master permit.
Okay, that's what answers my question. Thank
You
you.
can get those trades individually,
Mhm.
but anytime you have 2 or more, we roll it into one for each.
Thank you.
She should have signed it at that point.
That's easy. He's got that.
Well, yeah. I just had a comment that I feel is necessary to make. And that is, as the testimony provided, part of the purpose of the fines are the extended man hours spent on these properties for a year and a half
Negative, sir, just since June 25th,
of 21.
2021.
Okay, I was thinking you went back prior to that.
No, sir, I was deployed overseas at that time.
Thank you for your service. But the extended hours that are spent chasing this down, even to the extent of city legal services, that's part of the basis that council used to set the amount of the fines. That council's one that actually set the fines, correct?
Correct, they are adopted by ordinance.
Okay, so this is an ordinance.
Same with the permit fees, right?
Same with permit fees. Permit fees are by ordinance.
The 249 property, is that the back building, is that the salon? Yes. For you to see?
Yes.
All right, we have three different letters from Mr. Crump that ask for an appeal, notice to vacate. On the three different properties, 249 back building, 249 main structure, and the 516 DD. All right, so we need to have a motion for each one of those. And going back to the commission is how's everybody feel about trying to help Mr. Crump in some way?
Looking for an inclusive discussion.
It's open.
Well, I say, look, actually, I feel an obligation to the ordinances and the intent of city council.
Protecting us from wild, out of control development.
Yes. That's just my personal feel. Be glad to listen to contrary opinions.
Let me just say that I think we're in predicament here, number one. Number two, as you say, I almost feel like this is a court of law. And I wonder, number three, why this is coming for us. I guess that's the proper place for it to come for this type of situation. But I know that my residence where I live, I didn't have a shed. And so I got the means to build the shed. I guess instinctively knew that I needed to go to the city and I needed to get a permit, which I did, and got a building permit to build a shed on my property. And so, I mean, I appreciate, you want to feel somewhat sympathetic, right? Thank you, because ignorance, ignorance of the law. On the other hand, it seems like, anybody who wants to do this kind of business should be cognitive of those obligations. So, I just, again, just for observation.
Mr. Crump was, working with Mr. Rupert, and whether he knew what Mr. Rupert was doing or not, that's on Mr. Crump. But he's got a lot of fees coming up. With the reviews and the documents he has to provide, he's got a lot of additional costs coming up. And, is that our problem? No. I mean, it's in black and white, but I just feel compelled to help the guy a little bit. But that's totally up to everyone on this commission. And so got basic fees for each one of these. And I would again ask our attorney, what's the usually we have a motion prepared. So I don't know what that narrative is for that motion. And like I said, there are fees attached to each one. And I'll just tell you what those are. For the back building of $249, $1,795. These are round numbers. For the main structure at $249, it's $3,061. And for 516, it's $7,952. You choose to waive one of those, two of those, or none of those. So how should that motion be?
There's going to be three separate motions with this three separate petitions. The first one would be that you move to affirm the decision of your building commissioner to issue the notice to vacate on 249 North Madison Avenue, and then either affirm or waive the fees associated with that property. Same motion for the next one, same motion for the last one. And then at the end, if you just authorize my firm to draft this order to memorialize this and get it to the president to sign.
Okay. So I need a motion on the first one. This would be 249, the back building, be at $1,795, and affirm the notice to vacate and the fees, or from the to vacate and waive the fees. So I need a motion for the first one.
President, in regards to 516 North Madison Avenue, Suites D and E, there's a fine proposed of $7,952, as detailed by City of Greenwood Building Commissioner Kenneth Seal. I'd like to move to affirm the notices of non-compliance and fees as recommended.
So you're affirming the notice to vacate and fines.
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shell and second by Mr. King. All those in favor of that motion signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Okay. Next one.
President. In regards to 249 North Madison Avenue, primary structure. Fine proposed by the building commissioner in accordance with city ordinances, $3,061.45. I'd like to move to affirm the notice of non-compliance. And the fines as stated.
Second. Motion by Mr. Shell, second by Mr. King. Mr. King, all those in favor of that motion signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Mr. President, in regard to 249 North Madison Avenue, beauty salon unit C.
Can I interrupt for 1 minute?
No,
No. At this point.
In regards to the proposed fine by the building commissioner of the city of Greenwood, Mr. Kenneth Steele, $1,795.10. I move to affirm the notice of non-compliance and the recommended ordinance supported fine.
Second. Motion by Mr. Shell, second by Mr. King. All those in favor of that motion signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
move to authorize, my firm to draft an order.
We need
Yes, please.
need a motion to,
An order.
a motion to draft an order for their phone to,
A motion for the attorney to draft an order, permission to draft an order.
I'm moved.
Whatever you just said, I moved to.
okay, motion by Mr. King.
And I'll second
by
that.
Ms. Gardner. All those in favor, all those
For raise your right.
for that motion, signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. What's the next thing Mr. Crump needs to do?
Well, you heard the order, she's to vacate the premises, they're not to be occupied until he gets his certificates of design release, and I'm assuming a letter from the design professional that everything is in order, so that he can then pay his fees, get his permits, and certificates of occupancy. Is that correct, Mr. Seal?
Yes.
That's the rule, Mr. Crump.
In my previous notices, there was a timeline. The timeline is typically outlined by the Greenwood Municipal Code. Because that stayed by his notice of appeal, is there a new timeline, or is that action or order now immediate? Just for clarification.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry. I was,
Yes, sir, I'd be glad to.
like,
In the city of Greenwood municipal ordinance, they provide timelines for certain events, right? For notices and when they can appeal, how long you are required to give somebody a minimum, for example, of 10 days to correct their issue. In this case, the original notices of violation or orders to vacate, orders of non-compliance, Mr. Crump was given 10 days to vacate, as outlined in the Greenwood Municipal Code. When he appealed, those orders were stayed.
mhm.
Now that they are affirmed, is there a new 10-day period or a 30-day period? Does the commission wish to instill any period for compliance or for Mr. Crump to vacate? Or is that order to vacate immediate, i.e. midnight tonight as of now?
I would suggest the board take that up unless we're back here in 2 weeks. That doesn't make sense. He wants to know. It would stay, hey, you need to leave the property. That stayed while his appeal was pending. Today we appealed, or we said, no, actually, we're gonna uphold what you said. He wants to know if he needs to go right now and start emptying his houses out there or his properties, or if you guys want to give him a period of time to do that.
How many of those suites are occupied? All of them.
It's gonna put a financial burden on me.
I'd say,
So I'd like to see business cease immediately. And maybe we can have some time to get it empty.
well, he's trying to make it right.
That's the point. I mean, how,
He's trying to make it right.
do you want to have it an empty shell of buildings if
How long does it usually
it's quite a
take?
burden?
Well, the site plan review, take 45 to 60 days.
Plus, how long does DHS take?
Sir, because he's probably halfway through that process, I expect he'll be in compliance with at least 2 of the properties within the next 1 to 3 weeks. And the other one, we understand that DHS may be requesting a Rule 13 review, which could take a couple of additional weeks. But in my experience, which is vast, I don't see hurdles on that side. Again, look, I speak more from the building side, and I know that planning and stormwater and these other departments have their subject matter experts that would require additional items.
I'm just trying to game out the whole, like, where everything's lining up in time.
You guys really don't have authority to go do this sort of thing, but as a practical matter, it'll have to come back in front of you for him to enforce it. Right? So I think what you would just be doing is telling your building commissioner, give him X amount of days, but you definitely don't have authority to make any. of
This is a
these
recommendation.
extensions.
It's a recommendation.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. With that being said, that's where we want to do on that.
Well, he started the process. Well, he's been working in good faith with you.
Yes, sir.
You have a recommendation? If you can say no, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. With your experience and everything. And feel free to kick that back to us. Again, I'm seriously not trying to put you on the spot.
45 days. What's the original? What was the original deadline?
10 days.
10 days.
So 10 days is the minimum outlined by the Greenwood Municipal Code for responsible for government enforcement. And that's across all boards.
If I can add to this timeline discussion, about 45 to 60 days is once we've received site civil plans, which if those have not been prepared, that's another,
However long.
yes.
I'm thinking-
So we're honest, we're talking really 3 different timelines. We're talking building occupation, building standards. We're talking submittal of
Right.
site plan and then actual completion of the site plan.
Here's what I would suggest. I would recommend, since he started, he's working well with our department, I would say 30 days. Give 30 days. And then expedite the process on getting site plans here. If there's good faith in showing in that, then we can revisit that if we need to extend that time frame to get that approval.
Kind of get DHS.
Right.
planning.
But at this point, the 30 days would give him an opportunity to get, he's asking for, and not create an additional hardship on Mr. Crump. That would be my recommendation. I'll entertain a motion.
We have a meeting scheduled for 2 weeks.
Yes,
We have business on the 14th.
yes,
28th would be 28 days. 28th of March would be 28 days.
I'm going to ask for progress report on 14th. Would you be opposed to that?
No. You come back and bring us a progress report and we go from there. Trying to work with you. Okay.
Appreciate it. The site plan he's talking about, that's never been brought up to me. I mean, that's up, it's not.
well, typically, if we have permits submitted before construction starts, we would flag that before the building permit is even reviewed. So we're kind of caught on that one a little bit.
You'll have to get with your architect and say, hey, here's the opportunity I have, help me, let's expedite this. The properties aren't that big, so I wouldn't think it would take that much to do a site plan.
So it's a site, it's up, come from our engineer.
Yes, they've done site plans with us before. If you said I need a site plan, they would know. what
You're
you're
done. I have.
Donald will take care.
Sorry.
Make that. All right, so that's a recommendation.
Second.
So entertain, well, need a motion
So progress, I'm just trying to jump on, so progress report on
for the
14th,
next meeting,
but recommend that they not
and you got 30 days
30 days.
to keep proceeding.
To clarify, who is to present the progress report?
Owner.
The owner, I would think.
I can talk to Mr. Seal before the meeting.
Yeah, talk to Mr. Seal and Mr. Crump and get us a progress report for the meeting. It's 2 weeks from today.
I will be here, so I can do
Yeah.
Works. All right, so what's the motion?
So move for progress report 2 weeks.
Huh?
We move to get a progress report 2 weeks.
14 days.
Yeah,
And
and then order to staying.
Vacate.
This really isn't the type of action that would require a motion anyways.
Okay.
You guys are just telling him your intent. You gotta understand. What you're doing here is he's saying, you violated the building code, and he's saying, no, I didn't, and then it comes to you guys, right? And you guys just call balls and strikes. Yes, you did, or no, you didn't. At the end of the day, if the city wants to go to the court tomorrow and says, we got a violation right here, and force it, judge, they can't. You can't control that. You're just politely telling him, hey, if you want to issue another building code violation to Mr. Crump and he wants to appeal it, we're not gonna be too happy because we kind of all understood you had 30 days. Got it? That makes sense?
so we're recommending work with him on the vacation, and give him 30 days. And then we'll get a progress report in 2 weeks. Okay? So there's no motion required. All right. Like I said, Mr. Crump, trying to work with you. And so stay in communication with Mr. Seal and let's go from there. Okay? All right. All right. Next order of business, any new business from the floor? Seeing none. Any announcements?
As mentioned, we do have business for our next meeting, so we will see you on the 14th.
I will not be here on the 14th. I'm working with you, Charles. Yeah, and will not be able to attend virtually, so I will be absent on the 14th. Any other questions, comments, announcements?
Move to adjourn.
Can I give you guys a rundown of who I am and
Absolutely.
I'd like to,
Yeah.
I'm pleased to be here. Mayor Mark Myers wanted me to be on the Parks Board because it was open. And I submitted my name in an interview with the mayor. And my experience is pretty big. I worked in North Carolina after I graduated from Penn University in landscape architecture. I worked for a private firm that did a high-scale, upscale development planning and design. Worked there for 12 years. We did golf course communities, resorts on the coast, multifamily projects. And then I moved back to Indiana since I was born in Indiana and went to Bloomington and worked for an engineering firm and became their director of planning and design, so I spent my 15, 12 years in Bloomington designing real estate developments and then getting to the planning department, getting to the zoning boards, getting approvals obtained, and then so the builders can go build. So my experience is good, and Mark wanted me to help out.
So they drove you to be a boilermaker.
Oh, yeah.
So basically,
We did say engineering.
we're bookend planners now.
Okay. Couple questions for you after we start. Anything else?
That's the motion to adjourn.
Need our money.
Meeting adjourned.
Signs.